So our next speaker, Tom Hall from Pearson, he has some interesting things to say about the company, change in direction, trends that he's seen. So Tom, come on up. We're very happy to have you taking the stage.
Thank you for having me. Clicker.
You can, if you want the podium, it's up to you.
I'll just look for my slides. Good morning, everyone. I feel like I have a slightly hard or big pairs of shoes to fill. I've never followed a founder of a political party onto a stage before. And I've also, I think, following a roundup by Per on the European ecosystem, that's quite a tough gig to follow too, so I'm going to do my best. First of all, I'm delighted to be back at Pathways. I came here for the first time last year, and I think it was the most unconference of conferences I'd ever been to. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel remotely difficult or awkward. It was just a very kind of natural 3 days of meeting great people, finding out lots of great things. And so it was a no-brainer to come back this year. And we at Pearson are delighted to be able to sponsor and play a small part in White Bull this October, just because it's so great to see what's going on in the European ecosystem and meet lots of new talent. So, are we good? I can wing it for a while. I have kind of a broad agenda, which I'll try and remember. So first of all, I kind of wanted to talk about the company I work for, because I'm making a position on behalf of the company, but also on behalf of my personal interest in education. I kind of want to get you enthused about the opportunity of investing in the classroom and global education. And we'll look at a few key trends which are shaping money flow and big changes in education curriculum worldwide. I can do the introduction to Pearson and what we do very easily. So we started off in 1824, so we're kind of ancient as we started in construction. And by 1995, we were distributing Baywatch, and we brought David Hasselhoff back to the US screen. So there was quite a long and varied route in between that. And over the last 30 years, we've really redefined our position from being a big media and real estate business, which owned mines and construction businesses and Madame Tussauds in London and distributed Baywatch, to an education company which focuses purely on educational outcomes and learning technologies for students. 10 years ago, if I'd been stood here, I would have been talking about textbooks and fiction. We own the Financial Times newspaper, and we publish Penguin Books. So our business, the education business as we know it today, has been built on amazing content and resources and great talent writing for us. And of course, new technologies give us amazing platforms to distribute those products in new and very innovative ways. And new technologies allow us to interact with our users in completely different ways. So the Pearson that I want to talk to you about today is vastly different from the Baywatch days. It's vastly different from an education content publisher. But I always think, it's very worth introducing Pearson, because we can't be arrogant enough to think that people know who we are. We kind of hide our brand quite often behind lots of amazing products, and people don't really pick up on actually what the company is behind that. So it's Pearson. A year ago to the day, I did a talk and we sponsored White Bull, and our kind of groundbreaking CEO, Marjorie Scardino, stepped down, or announced her step down that very day. And so my morning was spent kind of scurrying around, reading emails and trying to catch up with the news and kind of see what was coming next. And Marjorie had kind of been like the mother of the nation to our company. We have like 40,000+ employees around the world, and Marjorie was the kind of the matriarch, the figurehead. She had real warmth and humor, but also real vision to take us from such a wide portfolio to the education company that we are now. And so, a year ago, her kind of stepping down set off a chain of events which has seen the company restructured, and that's a process that's just kind of still ongoing. We have a new CEO, John Fallon, who's been in position for the last 10 months, and he's really doing an amazing piece of work right now to take our company from being like a huge portfolio, a holding company of portfolio companies with 50 different presidents and CEOs and lots of different strategies around the globe into one coherent company. And it's a real privilege, but also a great kind of intellectual challenge to be a part of that, because you're watching lots of slightly different strategies being brought under one hat, and as a result, we've really streamlined what we do and what we offer. So we've simplified the company into 3 lines of business. We focus on schools, we focus on higher education, and we focus on professionals. So professional is all about your English learning or your vocational skills of being a hotel worker in Nicaragua, or it could be the fact that you read the Financial Times and you need up-to-date financial journalism day to day. So we as a company have really kind of transformed how we pitch ourselves, and kind of beyond that, I want to talk to you about the kind of problems and the opportunity that we're working on in the global classroom. So I can do this bit without slides too, because it really is just talking about learners, and ultimately, we can talk about education technologies all we like, and how clever Kinect is, and the great things that Samsung bring into a student's life. But really, I think it makes most sense to focus on who we're actually teaching. And today's students are vastly different to pretty much any one of us in this room did not go to school in the kind of ecosystem that children are going to today. And I count myself in that. I have a 5-year-old son who's currently just starting school, and the kind of experience that he's going to have in a schoolroom has absolutely no similarities to how I learned. I can see tangibly it's very, very different. But those students have all these opportunities in their home lives. They're surrounded by iPads. I was talking to someone over drinks last night about, how early is too early to expose a child to a tablet. Quite honestly, the minute a child can crawl, they're going to crawl up and look at your tablet, and they'll be interested in screen technologies. And so we're kind of teaching a network of students who are completely digitally natural and savvy in their personal life, and then quite often you take them into a classroom and you switch all of the technology off, and you say, it's back to the whiteboard, back to the blackboard. And so let me just catch up with myself, and I can give you some. You see, I was going to show you photos of the Hof, and I was going to explain that we were kind of market leading, and this was all important, but I wanted you to kind of understand the faces behind the names. There they are. And that's kind of like the company strategy right now. But no, most importantly is talking about the learner. And Sandra Day O'Connor was the longest serving and first female Supreme Court judge in North America. And about 5 years ago, she very savvily launched a civics program to teach North American children kind of the rights and wrongs of society. And she very sagely said, what the hell are we doing putting this on paper? We ought to distribute this through video games. So that was one really great example of someone understanding that you've kind of got to meet your learner where they are. It's no good distributing a 2,000-page tome of facts and figures where most of your children are spending a lot of their downtime video gaming or blogging or surfing the web with their friends. You kind of have to inject something that's relevant to their daily life into their education life. But that's still not kind of happening everywhere. So Sandra might get it. And these kids, these are the kids of a friend of mine. They spend their downtime doing this. And you look at a photo of a higher education student. She looks very digitally savvy. She looks like she's all wired up, and we've kind of taken care of her and given her the right tools. Actually, the US higher education system is just not really working. So 46% of higher education students in North America are not graduating. and that's at fees of up to $100,000 for a standard US higher education qualification. Once those 54% of students that do graduate get into the workplace, you know, a lot of employers would say they have no relevant skills for the workplace. They are coming into a technology-enabled workplace, or a workplace which is focused on project-based work and ideas and creativity, and they've been delivered from an education system which is very traditional and linear. And to kind of confound the problem in North America, at least, tuition fees are going up by something like 70%, and the actual perceived value by an employer is going down. So there's an issue in that education space, and it's not just confined to North America. My child's 5 years old. At the moment, he wants to be a truck driver, and you know, we encourage him for all it's worth because I think it's great to have ambition. But you know, he's probably going to do a job that hasn't even been invented. And that, you know, that he's not going to be alone in that. So some 65% of school-age children are going into the workforce in 10 years' time, and their job title does not exist. So lead developer, senior, engineer, okay. But, you know, there are so many job terms that we take for granted today which didn't exist 10 years ago. Imagine what that's going to be like 10 years from now. And, you know, I kind of made this point slightly without slides earlier, but this is a generation of kids who just get it, and we're still teaching them in very physical, to be honest, kind of boring ways as far as they would see. They understand digital. It is like breathing air. They kind of swim seamlessly through it, and yet we as the generation that are building the products to teach them are coming from a world where we're still kind of finding our way. So again, there are some disconnects. So I call out for it. It is time for change. I think there's a few numbers that might get people in this audience excited, and Per did a great job an hour or so ago of kind of saying how much activity there is in the education space right now. So the global education business year on year is worth $4 trillion. And yet a lot of people are not talking about it, which alarms me when you compare that to the global mobile industry. And we spend most of our time debating Twitter IPOs and what Facebook are doing to monetize their mobile revenue. And then even it kind of dwarfs the global mobile advertising industry. So, you know, if there's a figure that I'd love people to tweet about and kind of take away and think about, do they want to kind of get a piece of the pie? Just think about $4 trillion, and that has that's come from IBIS Capital. It has a 23% growth projection by 2016, and you know, this is coming from massive global governments really embracing, you know, kind of 0 to 100 in terms of education transformation. So in North America, Obama and the government before him, you know, the kind of race to the top and change money has made massive changes in the U.S. education system. Still, you can see in those higher education figures, there's massive challenges to kind of get around. But then you go to countries like Brazil or Vietnam or China, and governments are going all out for an end-to-end digital curriculum and technology-driven education system. So that's where some of those $1 trillion are coming from. And I think at the same time as kind of understanding our learner and the kind of thing they want to see from us versus what we ship, we also ought to think about the whole kind of ethos behind education. So Joey Ito, who we work with a little bit at MIT Labs, has a great phrase, which is, you know, education is something that people do to you. It's a receptive experience, whereas learning is something that you do for yourself, and that's the absolute opposite of being passive. And so self-curation and mapping your own course in the classroom, building yourself, becoming an engineer, I think that's going to be a really big deal in how education companies succeed or die in the next 5 to 10 years. So it kind of to kind of prove or look at a few of my points, expand upon a few of them, I thought it would be worth looking at some of the big trends and trends that I see driving great companies now, getting great results, and also trends that I think, maybe 12 to 24 months away, we can even look at the next stage already and see how exciting that could be. So kind of number one, and it's not exactly a revolutionary concept, but tablets in schools. If any of you read GigaOM or follow what's happening in North America right now, there's a few horror stories about rollouts of tablets in Los Angeles Unified District. Los Angeles has made a decision, and we as a company, Pearson, are part of that, and so are Apple. Los Angeles have kind of very forward-thinking superintendents who kind of get the fact that tablets aren't going away anytime soon. And a digital curriculum that doesn't exist on a tablet really isn't going to be worth its salt very quickly. So they're going for a very aggressive rollout of iPads in the whole of Los Angeles Unified District. There's teething problems. Of course, there's going to be teething problems, and kids want to hack security walls, and screens are going to break. But I would say, just kind of, if you look and scratch under the press, you'll see some amazing stories of big, bold rollouts of digital media in classrooms, and that's just not going to go away anytime soon. That is, to me, a very natural process. So, innovators and creators and previous publishing companies are now really thinking very hard about what does my product or what does my assessment look like on the iPad or the Galaxy tablet or a $60 cheaper device in India or Vietnam. So that's kind of a trend now that is not going away anytime soon, and it will succeed. And I think there's clearly, of course, going to be challenges of adopting that, but there's a lot of work going on in the ecosystem to kind of make that very exciting. And I think, looking not that much further ahead, it's easy to see invisible computing playing a massive part in my child or anyone here with a school-age child who's got kind of at least 5 years left on the middle school clock. There's going to be an element of invisible computing in their classroom or wearable computing. So I think about tabletop technology. I think about Google Glass. I think about Siri. It's just so exciting how you could have your learning journey with you all the time that you're wearing. And so I don't think that's very far away. Secondly, technology is only useful. Technology for technology's sake is a stupid principle in education, and we can see plenty of examples where a blackboard and a piece of chalk is perfectly fine for kind of very many types of learning. But the very clever thing about data, of course, and I'm not going to talk about big data because like Per said, what does that mean? But data gives us personal insight into how student Jack Robbins just did in that test. And it also gives me data about how he's engaging with his teacher and with his peers. Is he actually listening? So this looks a bit of a car crash on the screen, but what it actually is a map of activity in a higher education classroom in North America. And the blue bubble is the teacher, and the kind of bubbles closest to him are students who have been engaged, and that engagement has come through responding by voting buttons, being part of class processes, putting their hand up and asking a question. And then the far outlying, dark blobs, they've kind of gone dark, and they're really not playing a part at all. They're not engaged. So that, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's a very simple way of analyzing who's kind of present and who's kind of just checked out for the 40 minutes and therefore actually hasn't got anything out of today's lesson and is likely to have the same problem next week. So let's pick them up and talk to them directly. So learning analytics, it's a no-brainer. It's here to stay. It gives us great power. Future, I think, body language will be kind of a natural evolution of analytics. And when I talk about body language assessment, I'm thinking about mobile technologies which exist today. So I think the Galaxy S4 was launched with great hype about the fact that The camera technology will follow your eyes as you're reading a book. And if they notice your eyes switching away from the book, they'll close it down till you come back to it, and it saves battery life. From an education perspective, that's a really good way to track engagement. So I think, again, we're not very far away. It's available technology in the consumer space that will move into the classroom too. So if I were looking at companies that were harnessing that kind of technology, I'd find that very interesting. This is kind of a potential bomb of a title, because every time someone from an education company talks about having no instructors in a room, it's almost like you're trying to kill yourself in front of your biggest community of advocates. Teachers are absolutely everything to us succeeding or failing. So don't read in, when I say no instructors, there's context here. From a technology perspective, we as a company and as a community and kind of the EdTech ecosystem, I think will live or die by the success of teachers to engage with technologies and then deliver their expertise through that technology. So we do everything possible to engage with teachers and make sure that we're empowering them rather than giving them problems in the classroom. And I think that's a really, really important message to land. When I say no instructors here, I'm talking about reaching audiences in far-flung locations where, quite frankly, a teacher just does not exist. And this is a very real example of we're in a community. This is this is not, none of these photos are staged. They're all either kind of Commons license or from our own researchers. So this is a group of kids in Ethiopia. Some of you may have heard this story before. So it came from a trial done by MIT earlier this year. And they dropped off kind of a box of Nexus tablets in this remote Ethiopian village that kind of still claimed to be one of the most impossible to reach parts of the world. There's definitely no teachers there. There's no internet connection. There's no power. It's kind of a place that time forgot. And rightly or wrongly, because maybe they want to be forgotten, the MIT dropped off this cargo load of devices. And it was really interesting that it was the children who went to this box straight away. It took them 18 minutes to get it open, and they put obviously trackable technology in it, so I'm not making these numbers up. It took them 18 minutes to open the box. It took them something like 120 minutes to get the devices working and kind of understand the operating system. It's Android, if anyone's interested. And by kind of 3 weeks in, they downloaded their first How to Learn the Alphabet app. And then, through tracking, you could see 4 and 5 and 6 weeks later, they were starting to learn ABCD. 6 months later, kind of having downloaded plenty of materials and started learning to read, they'd hacked the operating system and they could understand how they could try and create something through it. And that is all documented academic fact. So I think that is an amazing story of kind of your biggest advocate of technology in the classroom. First and foremost, it has to be the teacher kind of steering this process. But then it's about, I'm not... and then I don't know the password. But then it's about your students in the classroom really kind of being the biggest talent possible to go and use that technology. Let me just get a password. Farley. Barcelona for this. This is something of a experience, but at least I'm interested in what I'm talking about, so I'll just go. So Ethiopia is a really good example of, if you can't get a teacher to a location, a device and a piece of technology could be your friend there. And then, there we go. And my future example is kind of, it's not very hard to see from that example of remote cut-off locations, airdrop some tablets, to really virtual teachers and robots. And I don't mean this in kind of a zany, scary way. This is a Korean Ministry of Education backed initiative, and they did this to get English language learning into hard to reach locations where you haven't got qualified teachers. And again, I think there's an element of kind of, I'm not trying to scaremonger about we're going to replace, flesh and blood teachers with amazing pedagogical expertise with a robot that's cold and clinical. This is just more about kind of meeting the conditions that you're faced with and harnessing technology to do something really powerful. So this is the Penguin robot, and they're being rolled out in about 7,000 primary schools in Korea. And I can see examples where you might take that Ethiopian example to a slightly more sophisticated, effective measure by actually having a robot to deliver a class experience with those kids. So that's my one more prediction. Number 4 is all about the MOOCs, massive open online courses. They're all the rage. And, you can't read enough blogs about them because everyone's talking about MOOCs. And the big thing about MOOCs is they're targeting like I said at the beginning, a North American higher education system, which in some ways is not working. They're harnessing and targeting a global community of people who want to learn at their own pace. And just because you come from an underprivileged favela in Rio de Janeiro doesn't mean you can't go online and learn with Harvard's best educators. So for that, I'm all for that. I think it's amazing. And, this is creating huge communities of learners who want to generate their own education, and they're going online to learn from the biggest and the best. And it's not really far until we get to kind of an ecosystem of rock star teachers. And this is already happening. So this is a bus in Hong Kong, but actually it might as well be in Korea because this is all the rage in Korea too. And after-school clubs in Asia are a really big deal. In fact, whether your kid goes to private or public school, it's almost guaranteed that you send them to after-school clubs, and you don't see them until dinner time. They go and do after-school English or after-school STEM subjects. And out of that, the best academies are really creating rock star teachers who inject fun and as much fun as you can have after already 8 hours of school in real school, and then you go to after school. And they're creating kind of waiting lists just beyond belief. And this will also happen in the MOOC world. So online teachers are going to become very high-profile players. So I'm not saying go and invest in the next Thiel or Mr. Shum from Hong Kong, but keep an eye on them because they're going to go and build their own portfolios and their own media platforms. And that's going to be very disruptive and very powerful. Kind of gaming. Gaming gets talked a lot, I think, in education discussions, and quite rightly so, because Per mentioned his son playing Minecraft. This is an example of corporate education. So in worldwide, the Marriott Group, the hotel business, they take on something like 50,000 new employees a year. And in order to automate that kind of onboarding process, you get a kind of a welcome to Marriott world through gaming. And it looks a little bit, it's not quite Angry Birds, but it's an engaging online platform. And we have plenty of things in our own portfolio which train restaurant workers about health and hygiene. We train rig workers how to pour concrete underground. This is all done through online gaming. And again, that is a massive trend now. It's something that I would look for investment opportunities in. And I can see, I think where it's going is going to be kind of a combination of learning and portable technologies and data. So imagine all of the different data points you could collect throughout the day by your various pieces of wearable technology, stealth learning, so it's invisible, it's not something you're shouting to the world, but you're constantly taking challenges in the things that you do during the day. And this isn't kids, I think people worry that, it means that their 14-year-old teenage boy is going to disappear to his bedroom and never come down again. But that kind of happens anyway, and this is more about kids in their daily life having technology as a means to power up their learning and actually do something they enjoy. So, Minecraft is a massive consumer-focused game. Minecraft EDU is a kind of an awareness amongst teachers that kids can learn so much through this 3D world, and they can take those skills into the classroom. So this is a really powerful organization, Minecraft EDU. And I think stealth learning is kind of the next evolution of gaming. So that's the other thing I would keep my eye open for. Finally, kind of open education. I've already met, like, MOOCs is an open education system, but what I mean by this is kind of bricks and mortar coming down, virtual communities being very powerful, and really kind of extending that reach from privileged to all. And I think the kind of next, the future of that is really kind of hackable, wearable, light technology. And I pick out a few kind of examples. So Raspberry Pi, they're getting great press. They've made something like 1.75 million units in Cambridge in the UK already since launch. They've shipped 1 million of those in the UK school system. So we're teaching kids actively how to program and how to code and how to build their own things. I think that's really powerful for the future of the EdTech ecosystem, because we're going to create a future of doers and builders. And, tablets is an example now, but I can see, these kids are going to be making their own systems and building their own ecosystem. So I would look out for kind of the whole DIY element, hackable hardware, and I think we'll see some really interesting products in the space. So those are kind of my 6 trends. So there's 7 there for some reason, but there's really only 6. And I kind of wanted to close by not just bringing it back to Pearson and what we do, but more about what I think is important to how education players are going to create a much richer marketplace in the future. So I think we have kind of 3 rules in our team at Pearson, and I think this applies to the wider space. It's about being open for talent, open for business, and open for learning. And what I mean by that is in the talent space, I look at these 3 men, and I think none of them were born necessarily as they weren't trained as leaders. They trained as engineers and builders, and they've built amazing platforms. And so when we go out now and we're thinking about education products and services, textbook writers, very, very important, but I'm also really interested in who can code and who can build something transformative. So, the search for talent is hard. You're looking for people who understand pedagogy in the classroom, but actually, I'm just as interested in someone who's got a view on UX and what technology operating system we should be building on. And that's a very global search as well. So, I think that there is great, amazing examples of EdTech innovation coming out of Mumbai, just as there is out of Sao Paulo and Europe. And, I'm not doing down the west and east coast of America. There's amazing things happening there, but we're widening the search. And then when I talk about being open for business, I think we as an education company, we were used once upon a time to kind of running our own show and doing our own thing. And one thing I mentioned to Farley when we talked about what we might talk about today was it's no longer a one-man show. And I think, it used to be all about who wrote the best textbooks and who understood the curriculum the best. And I think now it's about who can bring together all of those various players in the space and actually harness something that works. Really kind of thinking about, does the infrastructure in the classroom work? Is the Wi-Fi dependable? Does the tablet meet the budget and specifications of the curriculum? So we work with a lot of different companies. We didn't used to, and that again I think is a really fascinating journey. And it's also it's making a much richer space. And it's about kind of, again, meeting your engineers and your coders where they are. So we spend a lot of time at spaces like General Assembly in the North America, Rocket Space in California, meeting real talent on the ground. And I think it's, us getting out of our previous comfort zone and finding talent where they're working. we opened up a lot of our content, which people still say to me, "You're the content company," and I'm not offended by that at all, because that's how we built ourselves. Actually, what we're doing in ways of reinventing ourselves is giving a lot of our content away for free, because that's what's going to allow people to build really engaging new products. And so, a developer.pearson.com is our API platform for kind of saying, if you think you've got a great idea for dictionaries and maths learning, come and play in the sandpit and let us know what you've made. And then just finally, I think open for learning, and this applies to the whole ecosystem. And I might have 6 trends up my sleeve, but I would never pretend to know exactly what's coming down the pipeline. I don't think anyone can. And so I think we as a company, as a community, are constantly kind of challenging ourselves, what is actually going to work in the classroom? And it's about trialing lots of things. So, we have a big growing R&D team. We spend money on R&D, which 2-3 years ago we would have kind of slightly balked at in terms of amounts. It's of course, we're kind of then in the same space as a company like Samsung. You have a long way to catch up in terms of R&D spend. So there's a lot of work to do. And I think it's about trying. We acquire quite a lot. We're starting to make lots of smaller stage investments. We've been quite active in the space. But this is a list of fairly traditional competitors of ours. I'm just as interested in angel investors in Barcelona who are making a small punt on a kind of student analytics platform as I am what our competitor just did in North America. So, there's a lot of learning to be done around who's got the best insight. And for us, we run an incubator. Again, as a corporate, that was a fairly unheard of plan 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's becoming fairly standard. I think for us, it's all about, again, housing talent and giving them insight to things that we've kind of already tried and failed, but also learning from those founders who come in and spend a lot of time with us. So we have our first intake of Catalyst right now, and it's amazing to kind of disrupt the workplace and disrupt existing ways of doing things. And again, I think it's really important that the wider EdTech community kind of embraces that commitment to try things and fail, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. I think that's kind of the end of my slides, and I look wistfully at the future. I think I would say to everyone, I'd go back to that $4 trillion, and I would say that there are, the kind of concept of education and learning is really changing. It's not about receiving; it's about partaking and being part of your life and part of your experience. And I think with that, learning can kind of happen anytime, anywhere. And so, the kind of the water feels really warm. There's never been a better time to be involved in EdTech, and I'm very happy to kind of talk to anyone about it and take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Tom. So I have a question. Best way to engage? Just pick up the phone and call you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I would...
I have his contact details, so you can go through me.
And as a classic corporation, we've been really bad at that previously. It's hard to break down the walls of that kind of brick and mortar headquarters. And so I think we've hired a lot of people who want to be outside. I quite like being in places like this. And I think it's about kind of getting it. But yeah, come and talk to me. There's plenty of people like me in the company.
But last time I tried to find you, you were in Korea and it was midnight. And
yeah, that happens.
Kind of a Where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Questions from the audience? Yeah.
I was wondering, there's been, as you sort of sketch in your talk, there's quite a lot of excitement. By the way, it's Toby Lewis speaking from Global Corporate Venturing, but there's quite a lot of excitement in the sort of education space about how technology can disrupt, and various VCs have been saying that they're going to target the space. But I've also heard that various people are thinking that there are quite a few sort of entrenched interests, and it's quite a difficult space to operate in. I was just wondering sort of how you see the startups looking to disrupt the space and do business in the space, how you see them navigating some of those challenges.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a very valid question, actually. And when you say I think, you know, education was a very traditional world. And it was kind of a closed door to a lot of people, and it was like the chosen few operated in that space. So without, you know, you kind of need technology to open some of those platforms and open those doors. And I think the fact that most big education companies can see how disruptive this could be, they are receptive to new talent coming in, new leaders, new founders. But I think the biggest kind of pro for newcomers to the space is, I think, the consumerization of education, and the fact that people are kind of self-dictating their pace and what they're interested in. And so, you know, if you can't get into institutional education, which is where a lot of the money is, but there is so much going on in kind of the unofficial MBA space that, you know, you could circumnavigate that entire institutional space just by focusing on the direct-to-consumer. So I think it's actually a vastly different ecosystem than it ever was. But if you were finding it difficult to engage in that space, there's plenty of other aspects of education that are kind of it's a free for all, and I don't think it is entrenched in that area. Yeah.
Another question? Nope. Okay.
Maybe just a comment and following up on the first question. I think I'm a venture capitalist from France, Ventec. I think the trouble we are having with the education space as investors is that while all these things are going to change, so no doubt about that, there's great revolutions to come, education is by nature somewhere the R&D lab of a society, if you like, and it's a cost center that society is ready to pay for through governmental funds and stuff. So if you intervene there with, you know, private money and you try to make money in that space, it's extremely difficult because there's so much government funds that go into something. You know, I remember companies in Berlin trying to put online video tutorials on the net, and then a minute later some regional government takes the decision to just sponsor something like that with a national institute or so. In France, we're having the same thing, and they pour loads and loads of money in there, and you're suddenly faced with competition that you couldn't see coming. So that makes it really difficult for commercial gains.
There are many different aspects of education, and going back to my point just then, institutional is just one of those routes. And so I do think there's a definite kind of way of engaging with ministries of education, and kind of it is about influencing and thought leadership and showing them a new direction. So that, you know, that's kind of a long play, and that's institutional, and we play a lot there. But, you know, kind of we're seeing the big technology names that I listed on that slide, they're all scaling up big institutional teams going into that space. So it's not a closed door. And then I would also look at direct-to-consumer and thinking about things like mobile English and that kind of after-school learning in Korea and China. That's not a small market. And so there are tons of areas that you can go to avoid the kind of traditional framework. And if you are going to go into the kind of selling to governments, there is a process, and it's a long one, but I don't think it's a closed process. Anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Farley.
Tom, it's great to have you back.